In the quiet of the evening, where shadows softly play, a fairy tale wolf sheds his skin, gently drifting away, with a twinkle in his eye and a heart full of dreams. He waits for the Friday night glow, where the magic redeems. Oh, the wolf in the moonlight, he's found his true call, reading tales of wonder for one and for all. In a world of stars dancing, his spirit takes flight, with stories of beauty under the starlit night. He picks up a book, the pages worn and wise, every line a whisper under the vast skies, from far off lands where the wild things roam, to enchanted forests where the heart finds home. Oh, the wolf in the moonlight, he's found his true call, reading tales of wonder for one and for all. In a world of stars dancing, his spirit takes flight, with stories of beauty under the starlit night. With every word he reads, he casts a spell of peace, transporting all who listen to a land where joy won't cease. For in these fairy tales, amidst the laughter and tears, the wolf finds his solace, he conquers his fears. As the night grows deeper, he serenades the moon with melodies that linger, a soft and soothing tune. In this sacred hour, where magic abounds, the fairy tale wolf writes love into sound. Oh, the wolf in the moonlight, he's found his true call, reading tales of wonder for one and for all. In a world of stars dancing, his spirit takes flight, with stories of beauty under the starlit night. So if you hear a whisper beneath the silver skies, know it's the fairy tale wolf letting his heart rise.
Okay. Still don't know why the song cuts off right there, but it does. Congratulations on getting first guilty. Why does that seem so loud? Maybe it's just because I've been listening to my videos for 4 years ago. Well, 3 years ago. 22? Yeah, 3 years ago. I have almost finished editing all of the Frankenstein videos. So I think I'm on chapter 23, which would be 23 out of 24. Yeah, so almost done. Then I get to see what other books I didn't do. No, I think I've gotten most of them. I don't think I did individual stories for the Beauty and the Beast and other fairy tales. No, I did for Little Mermaid and other fairy tales. And I've done it for, I think, all of the Andrew Lang fairy books. But that's a lot of videos. I'm putting in a lot of work for stuff I don't get paid for. But anyway, it is Friday, and Friday night we do fairy tales. And we are in the 10th book of the Andrew Lang fairy book series, which means there's only 2 more listed as fairy books to continue. And then there's 9 or 10 that aren't listed as fairy books, which I may or may not get to. I don't know. I've got a lot of books of fairy tales to get through, so. But the thought that I have 1,300 and some odd videos on my YouTube channel. That's just the Storyteller channel, not the Stories for the Cubs or the video game one. But, yeah. I've done a shitload of videos. Okay, I gotta look to see how many videos I actually have on my channel. Okay, so according to YouTube, I currently have 1,337 videos on my main channel. And that's after me taking all the gaming ones off of it. But this is a video combination of all the script reads I've done, all the stories I've read, all the books and the stories. Because I did try to separate them as much as I could. But, damn. I'm doing a lot of work for this thing. That's not even including the writing. Good thing I like doing this. It would suck if I stopped. Or would it? Would I fade into obscurity? Possibly. But at least I do have my footnote. I do have 1 registered copyright for my first book. So there's that.
Who's a good boy?
Hopefully me. It's up for debate. And I gotta hydrate. I know, hydrate. There's a Cincino. Shh. Oh, come on. Okay. Oh. And I think I turned off the auto shoutouts because they were getting unpredictable. Especially when I would try to shout out Matsu and it would try you out. So. Oh yeah, I didn't change the shout out settings. Oh. I'm not with it today. I'm too stressed out about trying to get the stories done. Get rid of the newscast one. Like movie trailers and documentaries for fairy tale days. And We'll put Hyperactive Kid on this one. Okay. Yeah, Captain Centino. But anyway, I guess we should go ahead and go over this string. We really need to figure out why my book doesn't glow like I'd set it up to. I did have it set for that. It sure doesn't. Oh, well. Looks tacky. Go away. Okay. If I could find my copy of my 20-year-old copy of Photoshop, I could make a decent glowing effect. But I can't. So I can't, I guess. Anyway. If you are ready, I will start into the stories. So, are you ready, kids? Okay, I don't have my stream audible, so I can hear if it sounds right. Okay, now I can hear it too. Alright, let's get into these wonderful stories for this fabulous Friday night of fairy tales. And if you feel like it, share to X or whatever. Because I'm really bad about that, and I really wish they'd put that application back into the system where it auto-shouts. But anyway. Our first story for this evening. The Foolish Weaver. Once a weaver, who was in want of work, took service with a certain farmer as a shepherd. The farmer, knowing that the man was very slow-witted, gave him most careful instructions as to everything that he has to do. Finally he said, "If a wolf or any wild animal attempts to hurt the flock, you should pick up a big stone like this," and suiting the action in the word, "and throw a few such at him, and he will be afraid and go away." The weaver said that he understood, and started with the flocks to the hillsides, where they grazed all day. By chance, in the afternoon, a leopard appeared, and the weaver instantly ran home as fast as he could to get the stones the farmer had shown him to throw at the creature. When he came back to the flock, it was all scattered or killed, and then the farmer heard this tale, he beat him soundly. "Were there no stones on the hillside that you should run back to get them, you senseless one?" he cried. "You are not fit to herd sheep. Today you shall stay home and mind my old mother who is sick. Perhaps you will be able to drive flies from her face if you can't drive beasts away from the sheep." So, on the next day, the weaver was left at home to take care of the farmer's sick old mother. Now, as she lay outside on a bed, it turned out that the flies became very troublesome, and the weaver looked around for something to drive them away with. And, as he had been told to pick up the nearest stone to drive the beasts away from the flock, he thought he would this time show how cleverly he could obey rules. Accordingly, he seized the nearest stone, which was a big, heavy one, and dashed it at the flies. But, unhappily, he slew the poor old woman also, and then, being afraid of the wrath of the farmer, he fled and was not seen again in that neighborhood. All that day and all the next night he walked, and at length he came to a village where a great many weavers lived all together. "You're welcome," they said. "Eat and sleep, for tomorrow 6 of us will start in search of fresh wool to weave, and we pray you give us to your company." "Oh, willingly," answered the weaver. So the next morning, the 7 weavers set out to go to the village where they could buy what they needed. On the way they had crossed the ravine, which lately had been full of water, but now was quite dry. The weavers, however, were accustomed to swim over this ravine, therefore, regardless of the fact that at this time it was dry, they stripped, and tying their clothes on their heads, they proceeded to swim across the dry sand and rocks that formed the bed of the ravine. Thus they got to the other side without further damage than bruised knees and elbows, and as soon as they were over, one of them began to count the party to make sure that all of them were safe. He counted all except himself, and then cried out that somebody was missing. This set each of them to counting, but each made the same mistake in counting all except himself, so that they became certain that one of the party was missing. They ran up and down the bank of the ravine, wringing their hands in great distress, looking for signs of the lost comrade. There a farmer found them and asked what was the matter. "Alas," said one, "7 of us started from the other bank, and one of us must have drowned on the crossing, as we can only find 6. The farmer eyed them for a moment, then, picking up his stick, dealt each one a sounding blow, counting as he did, 1, 2, 3, and so up until 7. When the weavers found that there were 7 of them, they were overcome with gratitude to one whom they took for a magician, as he thus could make even 7 out of an obvious 6. Six, 7. Okay. You would think weavers would be able to count, because weavers have to count how many passes they make on a loom. But these are just idiots. There's no way around it. These weavers are absolute freaking idiots. Anyway, our next story, hopefully featuring no idiots, The Clever Cat. Once upon a time there lived an old man who dwelt with his son in a small hut on the edge of the plain. He was very old and had worked very hard, and when at last he was struck down by illness, he felt that he should never rise from his bed again. So one day he bade his wife summon their son, and when he came back from his journey to the nearest town, where he had been to buy bread, "Come hither, my son," said he. "I know myself well to be dying, and I have nothing to leave you but my falcon, my cat, and my greyhound. But if you make good use of them, you will never lack food. Be good to your mother as you have been to me. And now, farewell." Then he turned his face to the wall and died. There was great mourning in the hut for many days, but at length the sun rose up, and calling to his greyhound, his cat, and his falcon, he left the house, saying that he would bring back something for dinner. Wandering over the plain, he noticed a troop of gazelles, and pointed to his greyhound to give chase. The dog soon brought down a fine fat beast, and slinging it over his shoulders, the young man turned towards home. On the way, however, he passed a pond, and as he approached, a cloud of birds flew into the air. Shaking his wrists, the falcon seated on it darted into the air, and swooped down upon the quarry he had marked, which fell dead to the ground. The young man picked it up and put it in his pouch, and went towards home again. Near the hut was a small barn in which he kept produce of the little patch of corn, which grew close to the garden. Here a rat ran out almost under his feet, followed by another and another, but quick as thought the cat was upon them, and not one escaped her. When all the rats were killed, the young man left the barn. He took the path leading to the door of the hut, but stopped on feeling a hand laid on his shoulder. "Young man," said the ogre, for such was the stranger, You have been a good son, and you deserve a piece of luck which has befallen you this day. Come with me to that shining lake yonder, and fear nothing. Wondering a little at what might be going to happen to him, the youth did as the ogre bade him, and when they reached the shore of the lake, the ogre turned and said to him, "Step into the water and shut your eyes. You will find yourself sinking slowly to the bottom, but take courage. All will go well. Only bring up as much silver as you can carry, and we will divide it between us." So the young man stepped bravely into the lake, and felt himself sinking, till he reached the firm ground at last. In front of him lay 4 heaps of silver, and in the midst of them a curious white shining stone, marked all over with strange characters, such as he had never seen before. He picked it up in order to examine it closely, and as he held it, the stone spoke. "As long as you hold me, all your wishes will come true," it said. "Hide me under your turban, and then call the ogre till you're ready to come up." In a few minutes, the young man stood again by the shores of the lake. "Well, where is the silver?" asked the ogre, who was awaiting him. "Ah, my father, how can I tell you? So bewildered was I, and so dazzled with the splendors of everything I saw, that I stood like a statue, unable to move. Then, hearing footsteps approaching, I got frightened and called to you, as you know." "You are no better than the rest," cried the ogre, and turning away in rage. When he was out of sight, the young man took the stone from his turban and looked at it. "I want the finest camel that can be found, and the most splendid garments," he said. "Shut your eyes, then," replied the stone, and he shut them. And when he opened them again, the camel that he had wished for was standing before him, while the festal robes of a desert prince hung from his shoulders. Mounting the camel and whistling to the falcon in his wrist, and followed by his greyhound and his cat, he started homewards. His mother was sewing at the door when this magnificent stranger rode up, and, filled with surprise, she bowed low before him. "Don't you know me, mother?" he said with a laugh. And on hearing his voice, the good woman nearly fell to the ground with astonishment. "How have you got the camel and those clothes?" asked she. "Can a son of mine have committed murder in order to possess them?" "Do not be afraid. They are quite honestly come by," answered the youth. "I will explain all by and by, but now you must go to the palace and tell the king I wish to marry his daughter." With these words, the mother thought her son had certainly gone mad, and stared blankly at him. The youth had guessed what was in her heart, and replied with a smile, "Fear nothing. Promise all that he asks. It will be fulfilled somehow." So she went to the palace, where she found the king sitting in the hall of justice, listening to the petitions of the people. The woman waited until all had been heard, and the hall was empty, and then went up and knelt before the throne. "My son has sent me to ask for the hand of the princess," she said. The king looked at her and thought that she was mad, but instead of ordering his guards to turn her out, he answered gravely, "Before he can marry the princess, he must build me a palace of ice, which can be warmed with fires, and wherein the rarest singing birds can live." "It shall be done, your majesty," she said, and got up and left the hall. Her son was anxiously waiting outside the palace gates, dressed in the clothes that he wore every other day. "Well, what have I got to do?" he asked impatiently, drawing his mother aside so that no one could overhear them. "Oh, something quite impossible, and I hope you will put the princess out of your head," she replied. "Well, but what is it?" he asked. "Nothing but to build a palace of ice wherein fires can burn that shall keep it so warm that the most delicate singing birds can live in it." "I thought that would be something much harder than that," exclaimed the young man. "I will see to it at once." And leaving his mother, he went to the country and took the stone from under his turban. I want a palace of ice that can be warmed with fires and filled with the rarest singing birds." "Shut your eyes, then," said the stone, and he shut them. And when he opened them again, there was a palace, more beautiful than anything he could have imagined, fires throwing off a soft pink glow over the ice. "It is even fit for the princess," he thought to himself. As soon as the king awoke the next morning, he ran to the window, and there, across the plain, he beheld the palace. "That young man must be a great wizard. He may be useful to me." And when the mother came again to tell him that his orders had been fulfilled, he received her with great honor and bade her tell her son that the wedding was fixed for the following day. The princess was delighted with her new home, and with her husband also, and several days slipped by happily, spent in turning over all the beautiful things that the palace contained. But at length the young man grew tired of staying always inside walls, and he told his wife that the next day he must leave her for a few hours, and to go out hunting. "You will not mind?" he asked, and she answered, as a good wife, "Yes, of course I shall mind, but I will spend the day in planning out some new dresses, and then it will be delightful when you come back, as you know." So the husband went off to hunt, with the falcon on his wrist and the greyhound and cat behind him, for the palace was so warm that the cat did not mind living in it either. No sooner had he gone than the ogre, who had been watching his chance for many days, knocked at the door of the palace. "I have just returned from a far country," he said, "and I have some of the largest and most brilliant stones in the world with me. The princess is known to love beautiful things, and perhaps she might like to buy some." Now, the princess had been wondering for many days what trimming she should put on her new dresses, so that they would outshine the dresses of the other ladies at all the court balls. Nothing that she thought of seemed good enough, so when the message was brought that the ogre and his wares were below, she at once ordered that he should be brought to her chamber. Oh, what beautiful stones he laid before her! What lovely rubies and what rare pearls! No other lady would have jewels like those. Of that the princess was quite sure. But she cast her eyes down so that the ogre might not see how much she longed for them. "I fear they are just too costly for me," she said carelessly. "Besides, I've hardly need for any more jewels just now." "I have no particular wish to sell them myself," answered the ogre with equal indifference, "but I have a necklace of shining stones which was left me by my father, and one, the largest engraven with weird characters, is missing. I have heard that it is in your husband's possessions, and if you can get me that stone, you shall have any of the jewels that you choose. But you will have to pretend that if you want it yourself, and above all, do not mention me, or he gets great store by it, and would never part with it to a stranger. Tomorrow I will return with some jewels yet finer than those I have with me today. So farewell, madam." Left alone, the princess began to think of many things, but chiefly as to whether she could persuade her husband to give her the stone or not. For one moment she felt she had almost bestowed so much upon her that it was a shame to ask for the only object he had kept back. No, it would be mean. She could not do it. But then, those diamonds and those strings of pearls. After all, they had only been married a week, and the pleasure of giving it to her ought to be far greater than the pleasure of keeping it for himself. And she was sure it would be. Well, that evening, when the young man had stepped off his favorite dishes, which the princess took care to have prepared especially for him, she sat down close to him and began stroking his head. For some time she did not speak, but listened attentively to all his adventures that had befallen him that day. "But I was thinking of you all the time," he said. He's supposed to sing this. "But I was thinking of you all the time," he said at the end, "and wishing that I could bring you back something you would like. But alas, what is there that you do not possess already?" "How good of you not to forget me when you're in the midst of such dangers and hardships, answered she. Yes, it is true I have many beautiful things, but if you want to give me a present, and tomorrow is my birthday, there's only one thing that I wish for very much. And what is that? Of course you shall have it directly, he asked eagerly. It is that bright stone which fell out of the folds of your turban a few days ago, she answered, playing with her finger. The little stone with those funny markings upon it. I never saw any stone like it before. The young man did not answer at first, but then he said slowly, I have promised, and therefore I must perform. But will you swear never to part with it, and to keep it safely always about you? The more I cannot tell you, but I beg you earnestly to take heed to this. The princess was a little startled by this manner, and began to be sorry that she had ever listened to the ogre. But she did not like to draw back, and pretended to be immensely delighted with her new toy, and kissed and thanked her husband for it. After all, I needn't give it to the ogre, she thought as she dropped off to sleep. Unluckily, the next morning the young man went hunting again, and the ogre, who was watching, knew this and did not come till much later than before. At the moment that he knocked at the door, the princess of the palace had tired of all her employments, and her attendants were at their wits' end how to amuse her. A tall negro dressed in scarlet came to announce the ogre was below, and desired to know if the princess would speak to him. Bring him hither at once, she cried, springing up from her cushions, and forgetting all her resolves of the previous night. In another moment she was bending with rapture over the glittering gems. Have you got it? Asked the ogre in a whisper, for the princess's ladies were standing as near as they dared to catch a glimpse of the beautiful jewels. Yes, here, she answered, slipping the stone from her sash and placing it among the rest. Then she raised her voice and began to talk quickly of the prices of chains and necklaces, and some bargaining to deceive the attendants. She declared that she liked one string of pearls better than all the rest, and that the ogre might take away all the other things, which were not half as valuable as she supposed. As you please, madam, he said, bowing himself out of the palace. Soon after he had gone, a curious thing happened. The princess carelessly touched the wall of her room, which was wont to reflect the warm red light of the fire on the hearth, and found her hand quite wet. She turned around, and was it her fancy, or did the fire burn more dimly than before? Hurriedly she passed into the picture gallery, where pools of water showed here and there on the floor, and a cold chill ran through her whole body. In that instant her frightened ladies came running down the stairs, crying, Madam, madam, what has happened? The palace is disappearing under our eyes. My husband will be home very soon, answered the princess, who, though nearly as much frightened as her ladies, felt that she must set them a good example. Wait till then, and he will tell us what to do. Thank you for the stretch. So they waited, and seated on the highest chairs they could find, and wrapped in their warmest garments, with piles of cushions under their feet, while the poor birds flew with numbed wings here and there, till they were so lucky to discover an open window in some forgotten corner, and through this they all vanished and were seen no more. At last, when the princess and her ladies had been forced to leave the upper rooms, where the walls and floors had melted away, and to take refuge in the hall, the young man finally came home. He had ridden back along the winding road from which he did not see the palace till he was close upon it, and stood horrified at the spectacle before him. He knew in an instant that his wife must have betrayed his trust, but he would not reproach her, as she was probably suffering enough already. Hurrying on, he sprang over all that was left of the palace walls, and the princess gave a cry of relief at the sight of him. Come quickly, he said, or you will frozen to death. And a dreary little procession set out of the king's palace, the greyhound and the cat bringing up the rear. At the gates he left them, though his wife besought him to allow her to enter. "You have betrayed me and ruined me," he said sternly. "I go to seek my fortune alone." And without another word he turned and left her. With his falcon on his wrist and his greyhound and cat behind him, the young man walked a long way, inquiring of everyone he met whether they had seen his enemy the ogre. But no one had. Then he bade his falcon fly up into the sky, up, and up, and try his sharp eyes to discover the old thief. The bird had to go so high that he did not return for some hours, but he told his master that the ogre was lying asleep in a splendid palace in a far country on the shores of the sea. This was delightful news to the young man, who instantly bought some meat for the falcon, bidding him to make a good meal. "Tomorrow," said he, "you will fly to the palace where the ogre lies, and while he is asleep you will search about him for the stone which lay engraved with the strange signs. This you will bring to me. In 3 days I shall expect you back."
"Well, I must take the cat with me,"
answered the bird. The sun had not yet risen before the falcon soared high in the air, the cat seated on his back, with the paws tightly clasping the bird's neck.
"You had better shut your eyes, or you may get giddy,"
said the bird, and the cat, you had never before seen off the ground except to climb a tree, did as she was bid. All that day and all that night they flew, and in the morning they saw the ogre's palace lying beneath them.
"Yeah, me,"
said the cat, opening her eyes for the first time.
"That looks like a very rat-down city down there. Let us go down to it. They may be able to help us."
So they alighted in some bushes in the heart of the rat city. The falcon remained where he was, but the cat lay down outside the principal gate, causing a terrible excitement among the rats. At length, seeming she did not move, the bolder than the rest put out its head to the upper window of the castle, and said, in a trembling voice,
"Why have you come here? What do you want? Is there anything in our power? Tell us, and we will do it." "If you would let me speak to you before, I would have told you that I come as a friend,"
replied the cat.
"and I shall be greatly obliged if you would send for the strongest and most cunning of you to do me a service." "We shall be delighted,"
answered the rats, much relieved.
"But if you will inform me what it is you wish them to do, I shall better be able to judge who is most fitted for the post."
"I thank you," said the cat.
"Well, what they have to do is this. Tonight, they must burrow under the walls of the castle and go up to the room where an ogre lies asleep. Somewhere about him he has hidden a stone on which has strange engravings. When they have found it, they must take it from him without his waking and bring it to me."
"Your order shall be obeyed," replied the rat, and he went out to give the instructions. About midnight, the cat, who was still sleeping before the gate, was awakened by some water flung at her by the head rat, who could not make up his mind to open the doors.
"Here's the stone you wanted,"
he said, and the cat started up with a loud meow.
"If you'll hold out your paws, I'll drop it down."
And so he did.
"And now, farewell,"
continued the rat.
"You have a long way to go, and will do well to start before daybreak."
"Your counsel is good," replied the cat, smiling to itself, and putting the stone in her mouth, she went off to seek the falcon. Now all this time neither the cat nor the falcon had had any food, and the falcon soon got tired of carrying such a heavy burden. When night arrived he declared that he could go no further, and would spend it on the banks of the river.
"And it is my turn to take the stone," he said, "or it will seem as if you have done everything and I nothing."
"No, I got it, and I will keep it," answered the cat, who was tired and cross, and they began a fine quarrel, but luckily, in the midst of it, the cat raised her voice, and the stone fell into the ear of a big fish, which happened to be swimming by. Both the cat and the falcon sprang into the water after it, but they were too late. Half drowned and more than half choked, the two faithful servants scrambled back to the land again, The falcon flew to a tree and spread its wings in the sun to dry, but the cat, after giving herself a good shake, began to scratch up the sandy banks and throw in bits in the stream.
"What are you doing that for?"
asked the fish.
"Do you know that you are making the water quite muddy?" "That's the matter now to me," answered the cat. "I'm going to fill up the river so that all the fishes may die."
"That is very unkind. You have ever done any harm to you?"
replied the fish.
"Why are you so angry with us?"
"Because you have got the stone of mine, a stone with strange signs on it, which dropped in the water. If you'll promise to get it back to me, why, perhaps I may leave your river alone."
"But we'll certainly try,"
answered the fish in a great hurry.
"You must have a little patience. It may not be an easy task."
And in an instant his scales might be seen flashing quickly along. The fish swam as fast as he could to the sea, which was not far distant, and calling together all his relations who lived in the neighborhood, he told them of the terrible danger which threatened the dwellers of the river.
"None of us has got it,"
said the fishes, shaking their heads.
"But in the bay yonder there's a tunny who, although he's old, always goes everywhere. He will be able to tell you about it if anyone can."
So the little fish swam away to the tunny, and again related his story.
"Why, I was in the river a few hours ago," cried the tunny, "and as I was coming back something fell in my ear. There it is still, for I went to sleep, and when I got home I forgot all about it. Perhaps it may be what you were looking on."
And stretching up his tail, he whisked out the stone.
"Yes, I think that must be it,"
said the fish with joy, and taking the stone in his mouth, he carried it to the place where the cat was sitting waiting for him.
"I'm much obliged to you,"
said the cat, as the fish laid the stone in the sand.
"and as to reward you, I will let your river alone."
And she mounted the falcon's back, and they flew to their master. Ah, how glad he was to see them once again, with the magic stone in their possession. In a moment he had wished for a palace, but this time it was green marble, and then he wished the princess and her ladies to occupy it. And there they lived for many years, and when the old king died, the princess's husband reigned in his stead.
"Did you know I could speak fish?" "The real question is, does anyone understand what the fish is saying?" "Because apparently the caption system does not understand fish."
Worksheets, things near your doorstep to be What? Oh. Continuing. Our next story for this fabulous Friday Night of Fairy Tales. The Story of Manus. Far away over the sea of the west there reigned a king who had 2 sons, and the name of one was Ariel, and the name of the other was Arlad. When the boys were still children, their father and mother died, and a great council was held. A man was chosen from among them who would rule the kingdom until the boys were old enough to rule it themselves. The years passed by, the years passed on, and by, another council was held, and it was agreed that the king's sons were now of age to take the power which rightfully belonged to them. So the youths were bidden to appear before the council, and Ariel, the elder, was smaller and weaker than his brother. "I do not like to leave the deer on the hill and the fish in the rivers, and sit on judgment on my people," said Ariel. When he had listed his words, the chief of the council. And the chief waxed angry, and answered quickly, "Not one clod of earth shall ever be yours, if this day you do not take yourself for the vows that were taken by your king the father." Then spake Arielade, the younger, and he said, "Let one behalf be yours, and the other to give to me, and then you'll have fewer people to rule over."
"Yes, I will do that,"
answered Ariel. After this, one half of the men of the land of the Lachlan did homage to Oriel, and the other half to Lyrled. When they governed their kingdoms as they would, and in a few years had become grown men with beards on their chins, and Ireland married the daughter of the king of Greece, and Oriel the daughter of the king of Orkney. The next year, sons were born to Oilo and Iarlaid. The son of Oilo was big and strong, but the son of Iarlaid was little and weak, and each had 6 foster brothers who went everywhere with the princes. One day Manus, the son of Orio, and his cousin, the son of Iarlaid, called the foster brothers and bade them come and play a game at Shiny in the great field near school, where they were taught how the princess and noble should know. Long they played, and swiftly did the ball pass from one to another, when Manus drove the ball at his cousin, the son of Iarlaid. The boy, who was not used to being roughly handled, even in jest, cried out that he was sorely hurt, and went home to his foster brothers and told his tale to his mother. The wife of Iarlaid grew white and angry as she listened, and thrusting her son aside, sought the council hall where Iarlaid was sitting.
"Manus has driven a ball at my son, and in fain would have slain him," said she. "Let an end be put to him and his ill deeds."
But Iarlaid answered, "Nay, I will not slay the son of my brother."
"And he shall not slay my son,"
said the queen, and calling to her chamberlain, she ordered him to lead the prince in the 4 brown boundaries of the world, and to leave him where a wise man who would care for him, and let no harm befall him. And the wise man set the boy on top of a hill where the sun always shone, and he could get to see every man, but no man could see him. Then she summoned Manus to the castle, who for a whole year she kept him fast, and his own mother could not get speech from him. But in the end, when the wife of Orleal fell sick, Manus fled from the tower which was his prison, and stole back to his home. For a few years he stayed there in peace, and then the wife of Iarlaid, his uncle, sent for him. "It is time that you were married," said she, and when she saw that Manus had grown tall and strong, unlike unto Iarlaid.
"Tall and strong you have become, and comely of face. I know a bride that will suit you well, and that is the daughter of the mighty Earl of Fingad, who does homage for his lands to me. I myself will go with a great following to his house, and you shall go with me."
Thus it was done, and though the earl's wife was eager to keep her daughter with her yet a while, she was fain to yield, as the wife of Ireland vowed not to rule the land should the earl have, unless he did her bidding. But if he would give his daughter to Manus, she would bestow on him a 3rd part of her own kingdom, with much treasure beside. This she did, not from love for Manus, but because she wished to destroy him. So they were married, and rode back to the wife of Ireland to her own palace. And that night, while he was sleeping, there came a wise man, who was his father's friend, and woke him, saying, "Danger lies very close to you, Manus, son of Oriel. You hold yourself favored because you have a bride, the daughter of a mighty earl. But do you know what bride the wife of Ireland has sought for her own son? It was no worldly wife she found for him, but the swift March wind, and never can you prevail against her."
"Is it thus?"
answered Manu, and at the first streak of dawn he went to the chamber where the queen lay in the midst of her maidens. "I have come," he said, "for the 3rd part of my kingdom, and for the treasure which you promised me." But the wife of Iarlaid laughed as she heard him.
"Not a clod shall you see," she spake. "You must go to the old Bergen for that. Mayhap under the stones or rough mountains you may find a treasure."
"Then give me your son's 6 foster brothers as well as my own," answered he. And the queen gave them to him, and they set out for old Bergen. A year passed by, and found them still in that wild land, hunting the reindeer and digging pits in the mountain sheep they fell into. For a time Manus and his companions lived merrily, but at length Manus grew weary of the strange country, and they took a ship for the land of Lachlan. The wind was fierce and cold, and the voyage was long, but one spring day they sailed into the harbor that lay beneath the castle of Iarlaid. The queen looked from her window and beheld him mounting the hill, with 12 foster brothers behind him. Then she said to her husband,
Manus has returned with his 12 foster brothers. Would that I could put an end to him and his murdering and slaying.
They were a great pity, answered Merlin, and it is not that I will do it.
If you will not do it, I will, she said,
and she called for the 12 foster brothers and made them vow fealty to her. So Manus was left with no man, and sorrowful as he was, he returned home alone to Old Bergen. It was late when his foot touched the shore, and took a path towards the forest. On his way there he met a man in a red tunic. "Is it you, Manus? Come back again?" asked he.
"It is I," answered Manus. "Alone I have returned from the land of Lachlan."
The man eyed him silently for a moment, and then he said, "I dreamed that you were gifted us with a sword and became king of Lachlan."
But Manus answered, "I have no sword, and my bow is broken."
"I will give you a new sword if you will make me a promise," said the man once more.
"Be sure that I will make it, if ever I am king," answered Manus. "But speak, and tell me what promise I am to make."
"I was your grandfather's armorer," replied the man, "and I wish to be your armorer also."
That I will promise readily. That I will promise readily," said Manus, and followed the man into his house, which was at a little distance. But the house was not like other houses, for the walls of every room were hung so thick with arms that you could not see the boards.
"Choose what you will," said the man.
Manus unhooked his sword and cried across his knee, and it broke. And so did the next, and the next.
"Leave off breaking the swords," cried the man, "and look at this old sword and helmet and tunic that I wore in the wars of your grandfather. Perhaps you may find them of stouter steel."
And Manus bent the sword thrice across his knee, but it would not break it. So he girded it to his side and put on the old helmet, and fastened the strap. His eye fell on the cloth flapping outside the window. "What cloth is that?" he asked.
"It is the cloth that was woven by the little people of the forest," said the man, "and when you are hungry it will give you food and drink, and if you meet a foe he will not hurt you, but will stoop and kiss the back of your hand in a token of submission. Take it, and use it well."
Manus gladly wrapped a shawl around his arm, and was leaving the house when he heard a rattling of a chain blown by the wind. "What chain is that?" asked he.
"The creature who has that chain around his neck need not fear 100 enemies," answered the armorer.
And Manus wound it around him, and passed on to the forest. Suddenly there sprang out from the bushes 2 lions, and a lion cub with them. The fierce beasts bounded towards him, roaring loudly, and fain would have eaten him. But quickly Manus stooped and spread the cloth on the ground. And at that the lions stopped, bowing their great heads, and kissed the back of his wrist, and went on their ways. But the cub rolled itself up in the cloth, so Manus picked up them both, and carried them with him to Old Bergen. Another year went by, and he took the lion cub and set forth to the land of Lachlan. And the wife of Ireland came to meet him, with a brown dog, small but full of courage, and came with her. When the dog beheld the lion cub, he rushed towards him, thinking to eat him. But the cub caught the dog by his neck and shook him, and he was dead. And the wife of Ireland mourned him sore, and her wrath was kindled, and many times she tried to slay Manus and his cub, but she could not. And at last they too went back to Old Bergen, and the 12 foster brothers went also. "Let them go," said the wife of Ireland when she heard of it. "My brother the Red Krulok will take off the head of Manus in the Old Bergen now somewhere." Now these words were carried by a messenger to the wife of Oriel, and she made haste to send a ship to Old Bergen to bear her son away before the Red Growler could shake his head on him. And in the ship was a pilot, but the wife of Ireland made a thick fog to cover the face of the sea, and the rowers could not row, lest they should drive the ship to a rock. And when night came, the Lion Club, whose eyes were bright and keen, stole up to Manus, and Manus got on his back, and the Lion Club sprang ashore and bade Manus to rest on the rock and wait for him. So Manus slept, and by a voice sounded his ears, saying, "Arise!" And he saw a ship in the water beneath him,
and the ship set the lion cub in the shape of the pilot. Then they sailed through the fog, and none saw them, and they landed in the land of Lachlan, and the lion cub with a chain around his neck sprang from the ship, and Manus followed after. And the lion cub killed all the men that guarded the castle, and Ireland and his wife also, so that in the end Manus, son of Oriel, was crowned king of Lachlan. So can you tell that was Scottish? Okay, we are going to take a break because the ads are coming up. So I will see you in a few. Oh, well, that's interesting. My closed caption was attempting to get what I was saying when I was actually muted on the audio mixer. So, if anyone was reading, I'm not sure what you were getting out of it. Because it can barely handle me when I'm enunciating. course, it just turned enunciating to 98, so closed captioning. That is just weird music. Giga Chad theme music box. Okay. But welcome back from the ad break. I dread even checking to see what the closed caption did when I was trying to speak Scottish in that last story. I mean, doesn't even get Lachlan. 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 No, well. I kind of got it. Just bad spelling. It's Lochlan, but Lachlan. Not Auckland. Okay. So, our next story for this fabulous Friday night of fairy tales. Pinkel the Thief. Long, long ago, there lived a widow who had 3 sons. The 2 eldest were grown up, and though they were known to be idle fellows, some of the neighbors had given them work to do, on account of the respect in which their mother was held. But at the time this story begins, they had both been so careless and idle that their masters declared they would keep them no longer. So home they went to their mother and youngest brother, of whom they thought little, because he made himself useful about the house, and looked after the hens and milked the cow. Pinkel they called him in scorn, and by Pinkel became his name throughout the village. The 2 men thought it was much nicer to live at home and be idle than to be obliged to do a quantity of disagreeable things they did not like, and they would have stayed by the fire till the end of their lives had not the widow lost patience with them, and said that since they would not look for work at home, they must seek it elsewhere, for she would not have them under her roof any longer. But she repented bitterly of her words when Pinkel told her that he too was old enough to go out into the world, and that when he made a fortune he would send for his mother to keep house for him. The widow wept many tears at parting from her youngest son, but as she saw that his heart was set upon going with his brothers, she did not try to keep him. So the young men started off one morning in high spirits, never doubting that work such as they might be willing to do would be had for the asking, as soon as their little store of money was spent. But a very few days of wandering opened their eyes. Nobody seemed to want them, or if they did, the young men declared that they were not able to undertake all that the farmers or millers or woodcutters required of them. The youngest brother, who was wiser, would gladly have done some of the work that the others refused, but he was small and slight, and no one thought of offering him any. Therefore they went from one place to another, living only on the fruit and nuts they could find in the woods, getting hungrier every day. One night, after they had been walking for many hours and were very tired, they came to a large lake with an island in the middle of it. From the island streamed a long light. From the island streamed a strong light, by which they could see almost everything as clearly as if the sun had been shining, and they perceived that, leaving half behind in the rushes, was a boat. "Let us take that over to the island, where there must be a house," said the eldest brother, "and perhaps they will give us food and shelter." and they all get in and rowed across in the direction of the light. As they drew near the island, they saw that it came from a golden lantern hanging over the door of a hut, while sweet tinkling music proceeded from some bells attached to the golden horns of a goat which was feeding near the cottage. The young men's hearts rejoiced as they thought they had at last been able to rest their weary limbs, and wrapped a cloak of gold which lighted the whole house. Oh no. Try this again. The young men's hearts delighted as they thought they had at last been able to rest their weary limbs, and they entered the hut, to be amazed to see an ugly old woman inside, wrapped in a cloak of gold which lighted up the whole house. They looked at each other uneasily as she came forward with her daughter, as they knew by the cloak that was a famous witch. "What do you want?" asked she, at the same time signing to her daughter to stir the large pot on the fire. "We're tired and hungry, and would fain have shelter for the night," answered the eldest brother. "You cannot get it here," said the witch, "but you will find both food and shelter in the palace on the other side of the lake. Take your boat and go. But leave this boy with me. I can find work for him, though something tells me he is quick and cunning, and will do me ill."
"What harm can a poor little boy like me do to a great troll like you?" answered Pinkel. "Let me go, I pray you, with my brothers. I will promise never to hurt you." And at last the witch let him go, and he followed his brothers to the boat. The way was further than they thought, and it was morning before they reached the palace. Now, at last their luck seemed to have turned, for while the two eldest were given places in the king's stable, Pinkel was taken to the page to the little prince. He was a clever and amusing boy who saw everything that passed under his eyes, and the king noticed this and often employed him to his own service, which made his brothers very jealous. Things went on this way for some time, and Pinkel every day rose in royal favor. At length the envy of his brothers became so great that they could bear it no longer, and consulted together how they best might ruin his credit with the king. They did not wish to kill him, though. Perhaps they would not have been sorry if they had heard of his death, but merely wished to remind him that he was, after all, only a child, and not half so old and wise as they. Their opportunity soon came. It happened to be the king's custom to visit the stables once a week, so that he might see that his horses were being properly cared for. The next time he entered the stables, the two brothers managed to be in the way, and when the king praised the beautiful satin skins of the horses under their charge, and remarked how different was their condition when his grooms had first come across the lake, the young men began to speak of the wonderful light which sprang from the lantern over the hut. The king, who had a passion for the collection of the rarest things he could find, fell into the trap directly, and inquired where he could get this marvelous lantern. "Send Pinkel for it, sire," they said. "It belongs to an old witch, who no doubt came by it some evil way. But Pinkel has a smooth tongue, and he can get in the better of any woman, young or old."
"Then bid him go this very night," said the king, "and if he brings me the lantern, I will make him one of the chief men about my person."
Pinkel was much pleased at the thought of his adventure, and without more ado he borrowed the little boat which lay moored at the shore, and rowed over to the island at once. It was late by the time he arrived, and almost dark, but he knew by the savory smell that had reached him that the witch was cooking her supper. So he climbed softly on the roof, and peering, watched till the old woman's back was turned. Then he quickly drew a handful of salt from his pocket and threw it in the pot. Scarcely had he done this when the witch called his daughter to bade her lift the pot off the fire, and put the stew into a dish, as it had been cooking quite long enough, and she was hungry. But no sooner had she tasted it than she put her spoon down, and declared that her daughter must have been meddling with it, for it was impossible to eat anything that was all made of salt. Go down to the spring in the valley and get some fresh water, that I may prepare a fresh supper, she said, for I feel half starved.
But, Mother, answered the girl, how can I find the well in this darkness? For you know that the lantern's rays shed no light down there.
Well, then, take the lantern with you, answered the witch. For supper I must have, and there is no water that is nearer. So the girl took her pail in one hand and the golden lantern in the other, and hastened away to the well, followed by Pinkel, who took care to keep out of the path of the ways of the light. When at last she stooped to fill her pail at the well, Pinkel pushed her into it, and snatching up the lantern, hurried back to his boat and rowed off for the shore. He was already a long distance from the island when the witch, who wondered what had become of her daughter, went to the door to look at her. Close around the hut was thick darkness, but what was that bobbing light that streamed across the water? The witch's heart sank at once as it flashed upon her what had happened. "Is that you, Pinkel?" cried she, and the youth answered, "Yes, dear mother, it is I." "Are you not a knave for robbing me?" said she. "Truly, mother, I am," replied Pinkel, rowing faster than ever, for he was half afraid that the witch might come after him. But she had no power on the water, and turned angrily to the hut, muttering herself all the while. Take care, it's the second time he will not escape so easily." The sun had not yet risen when Pinkel returned to the palace, and entering the king's bedchamber, he held up the lantern so that its rays might fall upon the bed. In an instant the king awoke, seeing that the golden lantern was shedding its light upon him. He sprang up and embraced Pinkel with joy. "O cunning one," he cried, "what treasure hast thou brought me?" He called for his attendants as he ordered the rooms next to his to be prepared for Pinkel, and that the youth might enter his presence at any hour. And besides this, he was to have a seat on the council. It may be easily guessed that all this made the brothers more envious than they were before, and they cast about in their minds afresh how best they might destroy him. At length they remembered the goat with the golden horns and the bells, and they rejoiced. "For," they said, "this time the old woman will be on the watch, and let him be as clever as he likes, the bells on the horn are sure to warn her." So when, as before, the king came down to the stables and praised the cleverness of the brothers, the young men told him that of the other marvel possessed by the witch, the goat with the golden horns. From this moment the king never closed his eyes at night for longing for this wonderful treasure. He understood something of the danger that there might be in trying to steal it, now that the witch's suspicions were aroused, and he spent hours in making plans. And he spent hours in making plans for outwitting her, but somehow he could never think of anything that would do, and at last, as the brothers had foreseen, he sent for Pinkel. "I hear," he said, "that the old witch on the island has a goat with golden horns, from which bells hang and tinkle the sweetest music. That goat I must have, but tell me, how am I to get it? I would give the third part of my kingdom to anyone who would bring it to me." "I'll fetch it myself," answered Pinkel. This time it was easier for Pinkel to approach the island unseen, as there was no golden lantern to throw its beams over the water. But, on the other hand, the goat slept inside the hut, and would therefore have been taken under the very eyes of the old woman. How was he to do it? All the way across the lake he thought and thought, till at length he came with a plan into his head which seemed as if it might do, though he knew it would be very difficult to carry out. The first thing he did when he reached the shore was to look about for a piece of wood, and when he had found it he hid himself close to the hut, till it grew quite dark, and near the hour when the witch and her daughter went to bed. Then he crept up and fixed the wood under the door, which opened outwards, and in such a manner that you more than tried to shut it, the more firmly it stuck. And this was what happened when the girl went to her usual bolt at the door to make fast for the night. "What are you doing?" asked the witch, as her daughter kept tugging on the handle.
"There's something the matter with the door. It won't shut," answered she.
"Well, leave it alone. There's nobody to hurt us," said the witch, who was very sleepy. So the girl did as she was bid and went to bed. Very soon they both might have been heard snoring, and Pinkel knew that his time had come. Slipping off his shoes, he stole into the hut on tiptoe, and taking from his pocket some food of which the goat was particularly fond, he laid it under his nose. Then, while the animal was eating it, he stuffed each golden bell with wool which he had brought with him, and stopped every minute to listen, lest the witch should awaken, and he should find himself changed into some dreadful bird or beast. But the snoring still continued, and he went on his work as quickly as he could. When the last bell was done, he drew another handful of food out of his pocket and held it out to the goat, which instantly rose from his feet and followed Pinkel, who backed slowly to the door, and directly he got outside he seized the goat in his arms and ran down to the place where he had moored his boat. As soon as he reached the middle of the lake, Pinkel took the wool out of the bells, which began to tinkle loudly. Their sound awoke the witch, who cried out as before. "Is that you, Pinkel?" "Yes, mother, it is I," said Pinkel. "Have you stolen my golden goat?" asked she. "Yes, mother, I have," answered Pinkel. "Are you not a knave, Pinkel?" "Yes, dear mother, I am," she replied. The old woman shouted in rage. How beware you come hither again, for next time you shall not escape me." But Pinkel laughed and rode on. The king was so delighted with the goat that he always kept it by his side night and day, and, as he had promised, Pinkel was made the ruler over a third of the kingdom. It may be supposed the brothers were more furious than ever, and grew quite thin with rage. "How can we get rid of him?" said one to the other, and at length they remembered the golden cloak. "You will need to be clever to steal that," they cried with a chuckle. And when next the king came to see his horses, they began to speak of Pinkel and his marvelous cunning, and how he had contrived to steal the lantern and the goat, which nobody else would have been able to do. But as he was there, it was a pity that he could not have brought away the golden cloak, they added. "The golden cloak? What is that?" asked the king. And the young men described its beauties in such glowing words that the king declared he should never know a day's happiness till he had wrapped the cloak around his shoulders. "And," he said, "the man who brings it to me shall wed my daughter, and shall inherit my throne." "None can save it save Pinkel," they thought, and for they imagined that the witch, after 2 warnings, could allow their brother to escape a 3rd time. So Pinkel was sent for, and with a glad heart he set out. He passed many hours inventing one plan and then another, till he had a scheme ready for which he thought might prove successful. Thrusting a large bag inside his coat, he pushed off from shore, taking his care this time to reach the island in daylight. Having made his boat fast to a tree, he walked up to the hut, hanging his head and putting on the face that was both sorrowful and ashamed. "Is that you, Pinkel?" asked the witch when she saw him, her eyes gleaming savagely. "Yes, mother, it is I," answered Pinkel. "So you have dared, after all you have done, to put yourself in my power!" cried she. "You shan't escape me this time!" And she took down a large knife and began to sharpen it. "Oh, dear mother, spare me!" shrieked Pinkel, falling on his knees and looking wildly around him. "Spare you indeed, you thief! Where are my lantern and my goat? No, not! There's only one fate for robbers!" And she brandished the knife in the air so that it glittered in the firelight. "Then, if I must die," said Pinkel, who, by this time, was getting really rather frightened, "let me at least choose a manner of my death. I'm very hungry, for I've had nothing to eat all day. Put some poison, if you like, into the porridge, and let me at least have a good meal before I die." That is not a bad idea, answered the woman. As long as you do die, it is all one to me. And ladling out a large bowl of porridge, she stirred some poisonous herbs into it, and set about work that had to be done. Then Pinkel hastily poured the contents of the bowl into his bag, and made a great noise with the spoon, as if scraping the last morsel. Poisoned or not, this porridge is excellent. I have eaten it every scrap. Do give me some more, said Pinkel, turning towards her. Well, you have a fine appetite, young man, answered the witch. However, it is the last time you'll ever eat it, so I will give you another bowlful. And rubbing in the poisonous herb, she poured him out half of what remained, and then went to the window to call her cat. In an instant, Pinkel again emptied the porridge into the bag, and the next minute he rolled on the floor, twisting himself about as if in agony, uttering loud groans all the while. Suddenly he grew silent and lay still. I thought a second dose of that poisonous would be too much for you, said the witch, looking at him. I warned you what would happen if you came back. I wish that all thieves were as dead as you. But why does my lazy girl bring the wood to the center for? It will be too dark for her to find anyway. I suppose I must go and search for her. What a trouble girls are. And she went to the door to watch if there was any signs of her daughter. But nothing could be seen of her, and the heavy rain was falling. It is no night for my cloak, she muttered. It would be covered with mud by the time I got back. So she took it off her shoulders and hung it up carefully in a cupboard in the room. After that she put on her clogs and started to seek her daughter. Directly the last sound of the clogs had ceased, Pinkel jumped up and took down the cloak and rode off as fast as he could. He had not gone far when a puff of wind unfolded the cloak, and its brightness shed gleams across the water. The witch, who was just entering the forest, turned around in the moment and saw her golden rays. She forgot all about her daughter, and ran down to the shore, screaming with rage at being outwitted a third time. Is that you, Pinkel? Cried she. Yes, dear mother, it is I. Have you taken my golden cloak? Yes, dear mother, I have. Are you not a great knave? Yes, truly, mother, I am. And so indeed he was. But all the same, he carried the cloak to the king's palace, and in return he received the hand of the king's daughter in marriage. People said that it was the bride who ought to have worn the cloak at her wedding feast, but the king was so pleased with it that he would not part from it, and to the end of his life he was never seen without it. After his death, Pinkel became the king, and let us hope that he gave up his bad and thievish ways and ruled his subjects well. As for his brothers, he did not punish them, but left them in the stables, where they grumbled all day long. Are you not a rogue? Yes, I am. Okay, we've got 35 minutes left. I think how long this next story is. The Adventure of the Jackal tends to be a little long one. Especially if it's part of a trilogy. It's only 5 pages. And the second part is 4 pages. Okay. I may go ahead and do this trilogy. There's a Hitman top in chat, if anyone's watching. So our next story for this fabulous Friday night... can't speak. So this next story in this fabulous Friday night of fairy tales. The Adventures of a Jackal. In a country which is full of wild beasts and all sorts, there once lived a jackal and a hedgehog, and, unlike as they were, the two animals made great friends and were often seen in each other's company. One afternoon they were walking along the road together, when the jackal, who was the taller of the two, exclaimed, "Oh, there's a barn full of corn. Let us go and eat some." "Yes, let's do it," answered the hedgehog, and so they went to the barn and ate till they could eat no more. Then the jackal put on his shoes, which had taken off as to make a noise, and they returned to the high road. After they had gone some way, they met a panther, who stopped and bowed politely and said, "Excuse my speaking to you, but I cannot help admiring those shoes of yours. Do you mind telling me who made them?" "Yes, I think they are rather nice," answered the Jackal. "I made them myself." "Could you make me a pair like them?" asked the Panther eagerly. "I would do my best, of course," replied the Jackal. "But you must kill me a cow, and when you have eaten the flesh, I will take the skin and make your shoes out of it." The Panther prowled about until he found a fine cow grazing apart from the rest of the herd. He killed it instantly, then gave a cry to the Jackal and Hedgehog to come to the place where he was. They soon skinned the dead beast and spread its skin out to dry, after which they had a grand feast before they curled themselves up for the night and slept soundly. Next morning the Jackal got up early and set to work on the shoes, while the Panther sat by and looked on with delight. At last they were finished, and the Jackal arose and stretched himself. "Now go and lay over in the sun," he said. "In a couple of hours they will be ready to put on, but do not attempt to wear them before, or you will feel them most uncomfortable. But I see the sun is high in the heavens, and we must be continuing our journey." The Panther, who always believed what everybody told him, did exactly as was bid, and in 2 hours' time began to fasten on the shoes. They certainly set off his paws wonderfully, and he stretched out his forepaws and looked at them with pride. But when he tried to walk, that was another story. They were so stiff and hard that they barely shrieked at every step he took, and at last he sank down where he was and actually began to cry. After some time, some little partridges who were hopping about the herd the poor Panther's groans, and went up to him to see what was the matter. He had never tried to make dinner off of them, and they had always been quite friendly. "You seem in pain," said one of them, fluttering to him close. "Can we help you?" "Oh, it is a Jackal. He made me these shoes, but they are hard and tight, and they hurt my feet, and I cannot manage to kick them off." "Lie still, and we will soften them," answered the little kind partridge. And calling to his brothers, they all flew to the nearby spring and carried water in their beaks, which they poured over the shoes. This they did until the leather grew soft. The Panther was able to slip them off of his feet. "Oh, thank you," he cried, slipping around with joy. "I feel a different creature. Now I will go after the Jackal and make him pay my debts." And he bounded away through the forest. But the Jackal had been very cunning, and had trotted backwards and forwards, in and out, so that it was very difficult to know which track he had really followed. At length, however, the Panther caught sight of his enemy, and at the same moment the Jackal had caught sight of him. The Panther gave a loud roar and sprang forward, but the Jackal was too quick for him, and plunged into a dense thicket where the Panthers would not follow. Disgusted with his failure, but more angry than ever, the Panther lay down for a while to consider what he should do next, and as he was thinking, an old man came by. "Oh, father, tell me how I can repay the Jackal for the way he has served me." And without much ado, he told his story. "Oh, if you take my advice," said the man, "you will kill a cow and invite all the jackals of the forest to feast. Watch them carefully while they're eating. You will see that most of them keep their eyes on their food. But if one of them glances at you, you will know he is a traitor." The Panther, whose manners were always good, thanked the old man for his counsel. The cow was killed, and the partridges flew out with invitations to the jackals, who gathered in large numbers to the feast. The wicked Jackal came amongst them, but as the Panther had only seen him once, he could not distinguish him quite from the rest. However, they all took their places on wooden seats around the dead cow, which was laid across the boughs of a fallen tree, and began to eat their dinner, each Jackal fixing his eyes greedily on the piece of meat before him. Only one of them seemed uneasy, and every now and then glanced in the direction of his host. This the Panther noticed, and suddenly made a bound for the culprit and seized his tail. But again the Jackal was too quick for him, and catching up a knife, he cut off his tail and darted into the forest, followed by the rest of his party. And before the Panther had recovered from his surprise, he now found himself quite alone. "What am I to do now?" asked the old man, who came back to see how things had turned out. Oh, it is unfortunate, certainly, answered he. But I think I know where you can find him. There's a melon garden about 2 miles down from here, and as jackals are very fond of melons, they are nearly sure to have gone there to feed. If you see a tailless jackal, you will know that he is the one you want. And the panther thanked him and went on his way. Now the jackal had guessed what advice the old man would give his enemy, and so, while his friends were greedily eating the ripest melons on the sunniest corner of the garden, he stole behind them and tied their tails together. He had only just finished when his ears caught the sound of breaking branches, and he cried, "Quick, quick, there comes the master of the garden!" And the jackal sprang up and ran away in all directions, leaving their tails behind them. And how was a panther to know which was his enemy? None of them had any tails, he said sadly to the old man, and I'm tired of hunting them. I shall leave them alone and go and catch something for supper. Of course, the hedgehog had not been able to be part of any of these adventures, and was soon all his danger was over. The jackal went to look for his old friend, whom he was lucky enough to find at home. "Ah, there you are," he said gaily. "Since I've lost my tail since I lost you last, and other people have lost theirs too, but that is no matter. I am hungry, so come with me to the shepherd who is sitting over there, and we will ask him to sell us one of his sheep." "That is a good plan," answered the hedgehog, and he walked as fast as his little legs could go to keep up with the jackal. When they reached the shepherd, the jackal pulled out his purse from under his foreleg and made his bargain. "Only wait till tomorrow," said the shepherd, "and I will give you the biggest sheep you ever saw. But he always feeds at some distance from the rest of the flock, and it would take me a long time to catch him." "Well, it is very tiresome, but I suppose I can wait," replied the jackal, and he and the hedgehog looked about for a nice dry cave to make themselves comfortable in for the night. But after they had gone, the shepherd killed one of his sheep, stripped off its skin, which he sewed tightly around a greyhound he had with him, and put a cord around its neck. Then he lay down and went to sleep. Very, very early, before the sun was even properly up, the jackal and the hedgehog were pulling at the shepherd's cloak. "Wake up," they said. "Give us the sheep. We had nothing to eat all night, and are very hungry." The shepherd yawned and rubbed his eyes. "He's tied up to that tree. Go and take him." So they went to the tree and unfastened the cord, and turned to go back to the cave where they had slept, dragging the greyhound after them. When they reached the cave, the jackal said to the hedgehog, "Before I kill him, let me see if he is fat or thin." And he stood a little way back so that he could better examine the animal. After he looked at him, with his head on one side for a moment, and then he nodded gravely. "He is quite fat enough. He is a good sheep." But the hedgehog, who sometimes showed more cunning than anyone would have guessed, answered, "My friend, you are talking nonsense. The wool is indeed a sheep's paw, but the paws of my uncle the greyhound peep out from underneath." "He is a sheep," repeated the jackal, who did not like to think anyone cleverer than him. "Hold the cord while I look at him," answered the hedgehog. Very unwillingly, the jackal held the rope, while the hedgehog walked slowly around the greyhound until he again reached the jackal. He knew quite well by the paws and tail that it was a greyhound and not a sheep that the shepherd had sold him, and as he could not tell the turn affairs might take, he resolved to get out of the way. "Oh, yes, you are right," said the jackal, "but I'll never eat till I have drunk first. I will go and quench my thirst from—" No, wrong person. "Oh, yes, you're right," he said to the jackal, "but I can never eat until I have drunk first. I will just go and quench my thirst from that spring at the edge of the wood, and then I shall be back and ready for breakfast." "Don't be long, then," shouted the jackal, and the hedgehog hurried off at his best pace, and he lay down under a rock to wait for him. More than an hour passed by, and the hedgehog had had plenty of time to go to the spring and excuse me. More than an hour had passed by, and the hedgehog had had plenty of time to go to the spring and back, and was still no sign of him. As this was very natural, he had hidden himself in the long grass under a tree. At length the Jackal guessed that for some reason his friend had to run away, and determined to wait for his breakfast no longer. So he went up to the place where the greyhound had been tethered and untied the rope. But just as he was about to spring on his back and give him a deadly bite, the Jackal heard a low growl which had never produced from the throat of a sheep. Like a flash of lightning, the Jackal threw down the cord and flew across the plain. But though his legs were long, the greyhound's were still longer, and he soon came upon his prey. The Jackal turned to fight, but he was no match for the greyhound, and in a few minutes he was lying dead on the ground, while the greyhound was trotting peacefully back to the shepherd. Continuing, the adventures of the Jackal's eldest son. Now that the Jackal was dead, he had left 2 sons behind him, every whit as cunning and tricky as their father. The elder of the 2 was a fine, handsome creature who had a pleasant manner and made many friends. The animal he saw most was the hyena, and one day, as they were walking and taking a walk together, they picked up a beautiful green cloak, which had evidently been dropped by someone riding across the plain on a camel. Of course, each wanted to have it, and they almost quarreled over the matter, but at length it was settled that the hyena should wear the cloak by day, and the Jackal by night. After a little while, however, the Jackal became discontented with the arrangement, declaring that none of his friends, who were quite different from those of the hyena, could see the splendor of his mantle, and that it was only fair that he should sometimes be allowed to wear it by day. To this the hyena would by no means consent, and they were on the eve of a quarrel when the hyena proposed that they should ask the lion to judge between them. The Jackal agreed to this, and the hyena wrapped the cloak around him, and they both trotted off to the lion's den. The Jackal, who was fond of talking, at once told the story, and when it was finished the lion turned to the hyena and asked if this was true.
Quite true, Your Majesty,
answered the hyena. Then lay the cloak at my feet, said the lion, and I will give my judgment. So the mantle was spread upon the red earth, and the hyena and the Jackal standing on each side of it. There was a silence for a few moments, and then the lion sat up, looking very great and wise. My judgment is that the garment shall belong wholly to whoever first rings the bell in the nearest mosque at dawn tomorrow. Now go, much business awaits me. And the hyena sat up all night, fearing lest the Jackal should reach the bell before him, for the mosque was close at hand. With the first streak of dawn, he bounded away to the bell, just as the Jackal, who was still soundly asleep, was rising to his feet. Good luck to you, said the Jackal. Throwing the cloak over his back, he darted away across the plain, and was seen no more by the friendly hyena. After running several miles, Jackal thought he was safe from pursuit, and seeing the lion and another hyena talking together, he strolled up to join them. Good morning, he said. May I ask what is the matter? You seem very serious about something. Pray, sit down, said the lion. We were wondering which direction would go to best find dinner. The hyena wishes to go to the forest, and I to the mountains. What do you say? Well, as I was sauntering over the plain just now, I noticed a flock of sheep grazing, and some of them had wandered into the little valley quite out of sight of the shepherd. If you keep among the rocks, you will never be observed, and perhaps you will allow me to go with you and show you the way. That is really very kind, answered the lion. And they crept steadily along until at length they reached the mouth of the valley, where the ram, a sheep, and a lamb were feeding on rich grass, unconscious of their danger. How shall we divide them? Asked the lion in a whisper to the hyena.
Oh, it is easily done, replied the hyena. The lamb for me, the sheep for you, and the ram for the lion.
So I am to have the lean creature with nothing but horns, am I? Cried the lion in a rage. I will teach you to divide things in that manner. And he gave the hyena 2 great blows, which stretched him out dead in a moment. Then he turned to the Jackal and said, How would you divide them? Quite differently from the hyenas, replied the Jackal. You will breakfast off the lamb, and you will dine off the sheep, and you will sup off the ram. Dear me, how clever you are. Who taught you such wisdom? Exclaimed the lion, looking at him admiringly. The fate of the hyena, answered the jackal, laughing and running off at his best speed, for he saw two men armed with spears coming close behind the lion. The jackal continued to run till he could run no longer. He flung himself under a tree, panting for breath, when he heard the sound amongst the grass, and his father's old friend the hedgehog appeared before him. "Oh, is it you?" asked the little creature. "How strange that we should meet so far from home." "I've just had a narrow escape from my life," said the jackal, "and I need some sleep. After that we must think of something to do to amuse ourselves." And he lay down again and slept soundly for a couple of hours. "Now I am ready," he said. "Have you anything to propose?" "In a valley beyond those trees," answered the hedgehog, "there's a small farmhouse where the best butter in the world is made. I know their ways, and in an hour's time the farmer's wife will be off to milk the cows, which she keeps at some distance. We could easily get in the window of the shed where she keeps the butter. I will watch, lest someone should come unexpectedly while you are having a good meal. Then you shall watch, and I will eat." "Sounds like a good plan," replied the jackal, and they set off together. But when they reached the farmhouse, the jackal said to the hedgehog, "Go on and fetch the pots of butter, and I will hide them in a safe place." "Oh, no," cried the hedgehog. "I really couldn't. They would find out directly. And besides, it is so different eating just a little now and then." "Do as I bid you at once," said the jackal, looking at the hedgehog so sternly that the little fellow dared say no more, and soon rolled the jars to the window, where the jackal lifted them out one by one. When they were all in a row before him, he gave a sudden start. "Run for your life," whispered his companion. "I see the woman coming over the hill." And the hedgehog, his heart beating, set off as fast as he could. The jackal remained where he was, shaking with laughter, for the woman was not in sight at all, and he had only sent the hedgehog away because he did not want him to know where the jars of butter were buried. But every day he stole out of their hiding place and had a delicious feast. At length, one morning, the hedgehog suddenly said, "You never told me what you did with the jars." "Oh, I hid them safely till the farm people had forgotten all about them," replied the jackal. "But as they're still searching for them, we must wait a little longer. Then I'll bring them home, and we will share them between us." So the hedgehog waited and waited. But every time he asked there was no chance of getting the jars of butter from the jackal, put him off with some excuse. After a while the hedgehog became suspicious and said, "I would like to know where you've hidden them tonight. When it's quite dark, you shall show me the place." "I can't really tell you," said the jackal. "You talk so much that you would be sure to confide the secret to somebody, and then we would have all our trouble for nothing. Besides, running the risk of our necks being broken by the farmer, I can see that he is getting disheartened, and very soon he will give up the search. Have patience a little while longer." The hedgehog said no more, and pretended to be satisfied. But when some days had gone by, he woke the jackal, who was sleeping soundly after a hunt, after which lasted several hours. "I have just had a notice," remarked the hedgehog, saying him, "that my family wish to have a banquet tomorrow, and they have invited you to come. Will you?" "Certainly," answered the jackal, "with pleasure. But as I have to go out in the morning, you can meet me on the road." "That will do very well," replied the hedgehog, and the jackal went to sleep again, for he was obliged to be up early. Punctual to the moment, the hedgehog arrived at the place appointed for their meeting, and as the jackal was not there, he sat down and waited for him. "Ah, there you are!" he cried, when the dusky yellow form at last turned the corner. "I had nearly given you up. Oh, indeed, I almost wish you had not come, for I hardly know where I shall hide you." "Why should you hide me from anyone?" asked the jackal. "What is the matter with you?" "Well, so many of the guests have brought their dogs and mules with them, and I fear it may hardly not be safe for you to be amongst them. Now, don't run off that way," he added, "because there's a little troop that is coming over the hill. Lie down here, and I will throw these sacks over you, and it will keep you still, whatever happens." And what did happen was, when the jackal was lying covered with on the little hill, a hedgehog set a great stone rolling, which crushed him to death. Okay. the last of the Jackal trilogy. The adventures of the younger son of the Jackal. Now that the father and elder brother were both dead, all that was left of the Jackal family was one son, who was no less cunning than the others had been. He did not like staying in the same place any better than they, and nobody ever knew in what part of the country he might be found next. One day, when he was wandering about, he beheld a nice fat sheep which was cropping the grass and seemed quite contented with her lot. "Good morning," said the Jackal. "I am glad to see you. I have been looking for you everywhere."
"Morning,"
answered the sheep with an astonished voice.
"we have never met before."
"No, but I have heard of you. Oh, you don't know what fine things I have heard. And, well, some people have all the luck."
"You're very kind, I'm sure,"
answered the sheep, not knowing which way to look.
"Is there any way in which I can help you?"
"There's something that has had my heart set on, though I hardly like to propose it on such a short acquaintance. But from what people have told me, I thought that you and I might keep house together comfortably, if you would only agree to try. I have several fields belonging to me, and if they are kept well by water, they bear wonderful crops."
"Perhaps I might come for a short time,"
said the sheep, with a little hesitation.
"and if we do not get on, we can part company."
"Oh, thank you, cried the Jackal. "Do not let us lose a moment." And he held out his paw in such an inviting manner that the sheep got up and trotted along beside him till they reached home. "Now," said the Jackal, "you go to the well and fetch the water, and I will pour it into the trenches that run between the patches of corn." And as he did so, he sang lustily. The work was very hard, but the sheep did not grumble, and by was rewarded by seeing a little green heads poking themselves everywhere through the earth. After that, the hot sun ripened them quickly, and soon harvest time had come, when the grain was cut to the ground and was ready for sale. When everything was complete, the Jackal said to the sheep, "Now let us divide it, so that we can each know what is like its share."
"You do it," answered the sheep. "Here are the scales. You must weigh it carefully."
So the Jackal began to weigh it, and when he was finished, he counted out loud, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts for the Jackal, and 1 part for the sheep. If she likes it, she can take it. If not, she can leave it. The sheep looked up at the 2 heaps at once, one so large and the other so small. Then she answered,
"Wait a minute. I'll fetch some sacks to carry away my share."
But it was not sacks that the sheep wanted, for as soon as the Jackal could no longer see her, she set forth at the best pace to the home of the greyhound, where she arrived panting with the haste that it had made.
"Good uncle, help me, I pray you,"
she cried out as soon as she could speak.
What's the matter?"
asked the greyhound, looking up with astonishment.
"I beg you to return to me, and frighten the Jackal who is paying me what he owes me,"
answered the sheep.
"For months we have lived together, and I have twice a day watered from dawn, while he only poured it into the trenches. Together we have reaped the harvest, and now, when the moment to divide our crop has come, he has taken 7 parts for himself, and only left me 1.
She finished, and giving herself a twist, pressed her woolly tail across her eyes, while the greyhound watched her, but held his peace. Then he said, "Bring me a sack." And the sheep hastened to fetch one. Very soon she returned, and laid the sack down before him. "Open it wide, that I may get in," cried he. And when he was comfortably rolled up inside, he bade the sheep take him on her back, and hasten to the place where she had left the Jackal. She found him waiting for her, and pretending to be asleep, though she clearly saw him wink one of his eyes. However, she took no notice, but throwing the sack roughly to the ground, she exclaimed,
"Now measure."
At this, the Jackal got up, and going to the heap of grain which lay close by, he divided it again as into 8 proportions, 7 for himself and 1 for the sheep.
"What are you doing that for?" she asked indignantly. "You know quite well it was I who drew the water, and you only poured it into the trenches."
"You are mistaken," answered the Jackal. "It was I who drew the water, and you who poured it in the trenches. Anybody will tell you that. If you like, I will ask those people that are digging there."
"Very well,"
replied the sheep, and the Jackal called out, "Oh, you diggers, tell me,
Who was it you heard singing over the work?
It was you, of course, Jackal. You sang so loud that the whole world might hear you.
And who is it that sings, who draws the water, who empties it?
Well, certainly he who draws the water.
You hear, said the Jackal, turning to the sheep. Now come and carry away your own potion, and I shall take care of my own.
You've got the better of me, answered the sheep, but I suppose I must confess myself beaten. But as I bear no malice, go and eat some of the dates that I brought back in the sack.
The Jackal, who loved dates, ran instantly back and tore open the mouth of the sack. But just as he was looking to plunge his nose in, he saw two brown eyes calmly looking at him. In an instant, he had let the flap fall of the sack and bounded back where the sheep was standing. Oh, I was only in fun, and you've brought back the uncle with greyhound. Take away the sack, and we'll make the division again. And he began rearranging the heaps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for my mother the sheep, and 1 for the Jackal, counted he, casting timid glances all the while at the sack.
Now you can take your share and go,
said the sheep, and the Jackal did not need telling twice. Whenever the sheep looked up, she still saw him flying across the plain, and, for all I know, he may be flying across it still. Yay! The Jackal trilogy has been read. Again. Who's on that we might raid? Could be insane and try to raid Iron Mouse. No. Because I think she has got her set that she won't accept a raid from any less than 3 at least. Oh, I guess the Bookish is on. Let's see, she's doing birthday stuff. Apparently working on Legos. So, think Legacy? Pick a message, any message. Go ahead and raid Legacy Bookish. Don't have me. Okay, we got 2 people. So hopefully I will see you Monday before we all take off for American Turkey Day. So I will hopefully see you all then for some more crowd control Baldur's Gates. Is that what we do Mondays? See you then.
In the hollow of the night, shadows weave and twist. The wolf has told his stories, wrapped in mystic mist, lurking in the silence where the echoes softly play, the echoes of forgotten tales dimming as they sway. flowers drip like candle wax, slowly melting cold.